Welcome back to Stateside Veterans. Today we are going to talk about getting to 100% with your disability claim with the Veterans Administration. Before we get into this, got a small favor to ask. Just hit the like and subscribe button. In the corner, if you're watching this on a laptop, you probably see the Stateside Veterans logo, which is a little chevron. Hit that and subscribe for me, or just hit the subscribe button down below. It's going to help me get information out to the veteran community and improve YouTube's algorithm. So that's my ask. Just hit that subscribe. Give me a thumbs up too. I'd really appreciate it. So how hard is it to get to 100% with the VA? Well, before we answer that question, we need to understand the VA's funny math. It is not a linear function. It's not A plus B equals C. Let me give you an example. Let's take a hypothetical service member, Sergeant Snuffy. He retires and he has 3 different conditions that are service connected, and each is 50% compensatable. So you would think in the normal world, 50 plus 50 plus 50 would equal 150. That is not how it works with the VA. What the VA will do is they will take the worst condition that you have, the most impactful condition you have, and rate that first. In this case, it's 50%. Then they will look at the next condition that is service connected. That is also 50%. So the way the VA views this as the first 50% left you 50% injured, service connected, and 50% good. They will then evaluate the second condition and they'll say, well, of the 50% that's still good, we're going to give you 50% off of that. That gets you to 75. And then the third condition in this example of Sergeant Snuffy is he's got another 50% issue. The VA is going to look at you and say, well, you still have 25% good. We're going to take 50% off of that. That brings Sergeant Snuffy to 87.5%. Then what happens is the VA rounds up. So they dock all these things by orders of tens. In Sergeant Snuffy's personal condition, he is 87.5%. They'll round that up to 90. So in this example, somebody with 3 50% conditions only gets to 90%. So the takeaway here is getting to 100% can be difficult. So let's go through some of the examples that you need to follow to make sure that you're maximizing your benefits and getting as far up that scale as you are entitled. Remember, you've earned these benefits, so don't leave them on the table. A lot of people have a tendency to focus on what they think they should be rated for and not all of the conditions that they may have experienced while they are on active duty. Example, hearing. They might say, hey, my wife or my spouse can't hear me very well. I really think this is a major issue in my life. They put a lot of time and energy into their claim and focus a little too much on hearing. Now, hearing on the VA's rating schedule really isn't something that's particularly lucrative. And, it may take an additional layer of evidence or proof to really get that compensated properly. What I recommend is focusing on all of the conditions that you may have. Remember, these aren't just injuries that you experienced while on active duty. This could be any condition, injury or illness, that manifested itself while on active duty. Think about GERD. Maybe you experienced some sort of a digestive problem, 3, 4, 5 years into active duty. It's not necessarily an injury, it's an illness, but it's something that manifested along the way. So I guess what I'm trying to say here, guys, is don't just focus on the injuries, focus on the injuries and illnesses. And they need to be chronic in nature. This is something that's ongoing and requires treatment. So you need to kind of do a head to toe assessment and make sure that you're going back through your service records and capturing all the documentation that you possibly can. Now, don't worry, if you don't have documentation, you can always get things like a buddy letter. Sometimes a spouse may be able to write a letter and say, hey, I noticed that approximately 6 months after returning from deployment, Sergeant Snuffy began experiencing signs and symptoms of depression. That might be enough for the VA to be sufficient documentation. But don't just stop at the injuries, is what I'm trying to say. Remember, it's injury or illnesses. The other thing you need to keep in mind here, folks, if you're trying to get to 100%, is the condition getting worse? You might have a problem with, let's say, arthritis, and maybe one of your arms is giving you a hard time. The VA isn't going to automatically increase this service connected injury automatically. They're not going to just say, hey, you came in, you saw us at VA Health. We think that it's worse now. It's causing you a little bit more pain. We're going to increase this for you. That's not the way it works. You need to file for an increase in any injuries or illnesses that you may have. So don't forget about filing for things that are getting worse in your life. And let's be honest, folks. I mean, I got plenty of gray hair myself. As I'm getting older, some of the injuries and illnesses that I experienced while on active duty are tending to get worse. It just happens with age. Don't be afraid to put that in front of the VA for consideration. The next thing I want to bring up here, don't forget about secondary conditions. So let's take tinnitus as an example. You might have ringing in your ear, and folks, tinnitus is an absolutely annoying condition. It's not unreasonable to think that tinnitus has led to depression, which is a secondary condition in this example. And don't be afraid, again, to put this in front of the VA for consideration. There is a ton of examples of military people experiencing back issues. It's very, very common for service members to have some form of injury to the back while they're serving on active duty. Well, guess what? Back is a complex part of the human body, and it doesn't have a tendency in all cases to get better over time. In fact, there's examples of service members experiencing numbness or tingling in their legs later on in their life after a back injury. Well, guess what? That is a secondary condition now that is caused by a service-connected injury. In the case of the legs, you might be able to get 10 or even 20% if you're experiencing this problem in one of your legs. And guess what? If it's bilateral, meaning it's affecting both of your legs, then you get another 10% there. Think about other things like sleep. When your back is bothering you, when you're staying up because you're sore, you might be able to fall asleep, but 2-3 in the morning rolls around, and guess what? Your back is hurting. That leads to insomnia. That is another secondary condition that the VA should be made aware of if you're experiencing that. So these are just some examples that you might want to consider. You might not get to 100% on your first try, folks. There are a lot of people that put everything down in paper, and certain claims are denied. Don't worry about that. There is an appeal process. You can go quite a ways up the flagpole with this. I'll do another video on how to do an appeal a little bit later. But just remember, if you don't get it on your first try, it doesn't mean that some of these conditions aren't going to be aggravated with age or other life experiences and warrant a higher rating. So, continue to monitor yourself. The second thing I'd say here, kind of one of the final things I'd say here, is get help from a VSO. VA paperwork is complicated. A veteran service officer has the training to assist you with this and can help you get through the claims process with the best outcome for you. You might have to try a couple different VSOs. Not all of them are created equal. Theoretically, they have the same training, but you might just gel better with other people. Lastly, get your intent to file, and you have 365 days from when you put in your intent to file. So you can gather paperwork, work with a VSO, gather buddy letters, find old documentation that you think might not be important, but maybe. So get your intent to file done, and then your pay from the VA will be backdated to when you put in your intent to file. So I hope this information is helpful to you. Again, please hit the like, hit the subscribe, share with a friend. Really appreciate that. We need to get this information out to the veteran community, and that starts with you helping me out. Have a great day, and thanks for watching Stateside Veterans.